Hey again, everybody. This is the third PowerPoint for Unit 1, titled Philosophical Ideas Impact American Democracy. So we're just going to go ahead and get started on it. This is mainly going to cover the Enlightenment. So this should be some familiar names, familiar stuff to you from world history. The Enlightenment occurred roughly in the 1700s. The big thing I want you guys to take away from the Age of Enlightenment and know about the Age of Enlightenment is that it emphasized democracy over monarchy. That is the key thing to remember here. Yes, most of the Enlightenment took place in Europe, but that influenced the founding fathers, guys like Thomas Paine, Ben Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, Alexander Hamilton. And the big thing here is that it urged reason and logic for figuring out nature's laws. That's a fancy way of saying we feel like we should be able to rule ourselves. We don't need a monarchy. We don't need a king. We should be able to choose our own government. So that's the big thing to take away here from the Age of Enlightenment. And that's what this PowerPoint's all about, talking about how the Enlightenment impacted and influenced American democracy. All right, Thomas Hobbes. We talked a little bit about him on the first PowerPoint. He's different from a lot of other Enlightenment philosophers in that he felt that government is absolutely necessary, like other Enlightenment philosophers, but he didn't trust the people to choose the right government for themselves. So he thinks that an absolute monarchy is what all people should be ruled by. People can't rule themselves, so they should be able to give up their rights to an absolute monarch to protect themselves. This is normally a good time. Like if we were in person, I would kind of ask for your take on this because, I like to, I like to try to be as positive as possible, but, I tend to be a relatively cynical person and I question a lot of things naturally. So it's kind of one of those funny things where, he's got a point in a way, you can't always trust people. People are crazy. Y'all know that. But at the same time, you should have free will to choose who you want to govern you. So it's an interesting question. Anyways, sorry. You can tell I actually enjoy this stuff. This isn't just a bunch of malarkey to me. I actually enjoy it. John Locke is up next. John Locke, who had one of the longest noses in the history of mankind, he is going to introduce him along with Hobbes, actually. They both kind of get co-equal credit with the whole social contract thing. They're going to introduce some pretty important ideals, right? So natural rights. Natural rights, he believed that the whole thing is, people are born with basic rights. Everyone should have these basic rights. You should have the right to life, liberty, and property. If that sounds familiar, that's because when Thomas Jefferson writes the Declaration of Independence, he is going to adapt that and say life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which back then the pursuit of happiness meant property, to own property, right? Social contract, right? So this is the relationship between the government and the people who chose the government, right? People will obey the laws of the government, and in return, the government will protect the people and protect their rights. All right. John Locke was much more of a optimistic person, but even he, had a little bit of a cynical side to him, and he said he made sure to include something called the right to rebel. If the government is not working for you, if the government is trampling on your rights, if an absolute monarchy or a dictatorship has come and overtaken your government, you have the right to rebel, right? It is the right of the people to overthrow an unruly government. All right. So Jefferson, once again, took a lot of inspiration from that. All right. Next up is Rousseau. Jean-Jacques Rousseau. You can tell that he's French because that's one of the Frenchiest sounding names that you'll ever hear. His big thing, his idea was everywhere government is oppressing the people, right? So if you were a anti-government person. You'd kind of like Rousseau, right? So he thinks that, very populist in that he thinks that the only government that is just, is the one that the people create, right? So what kind of government, right? He's going to be a guy who is going to be a big pusher and supporter of republics, representative democracies, ones where the people are involved at the ground level, right? So very much like ours. He's going to be a big proponent of a government like that we eventually have. All right. Next up, Montesquieu, one of my favorite Enlightenment philosophers, and because he contributes arguably the biggest idea to American government. All right, so he says that the government needs to be strong, it needs to be powerful, but too much power can corrupt. So, in order to protect the people, we got to separate the powers. So, separation of powers, checks and balances. That is Montesquieu, and that is very, very important to American government. I apologize, I had to pause. My dog is very, very small, but he is very, very loud. So anyway, separation of powers, checks and balances. We can contribute that to Montesquieu. Highly, highly important, right? So he recommends separating the government into three branches. One will write the laws. That is the legislative branch. That's Congress. Another one will enforce the laws. That's the executive branch. That is the president. And then there is a last branch that will interpret the laws to determine whether or not these laws should in fact be laws. All right, and that is the judicial branch. Okay. All right, so got a little collaboration board here. This is one of my favorite things I like to do. This is where you will you'll answer this question down here. You'll share thoughts or images here. So which Enlightenment philosopher do you think had the biggest impact on our government and why? So you'll just kind of type that out and explain why. All right, next guy up, Thomas Paine, Common Sense. All right, Common Sense was a pamphlet or a leaflet written by Thomas Paine. All right, Thomas Paine was an immigrant who came to the Americas from England, and Common Sense was all about encouraging the people to support the American Revolution. All right, so we're not going to jump super into Thomas Paine, but just know that Common Sense was a leaflet that he wrote that encouraged the American people to support the American Revolution against Great Britain. All right. Next up, Declaration of Independence. Talked about this a little bit earlier. Jefferson is the guy who wrote that. Just know that. It's important to know. I think a lot of you probably already know that anyway. Two purposes for the Declaration of Independence. One, to declare independence. I know that sounds relatively self-explanatory, but hey, that's one of the big key things. All right. So in the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson, who was not the only one who wrote it, but he is the main guy who we give credit for it. He is going to say that the colonies are going to separate from England. We're going to declare our own independence. We're going to be fighting to build a new nation. And the second part, he's going to state why. All right, so he will go into great detail about what King George III has done to wrong us so much and why we are going to fight to create this new country. So the two purposes of the Declaration: declare independence, say, hey, we're splitting away from you. And second, to state the reasons why. We're not going to get into all the reasons why. That's more of an American one thing. But just know, two purposes of the Declaration. There they are. All right, John Locke's influence on the Declaration of Independence. All right, like I said, Locke had a big influence on Thomas Jefferson whenever he wrote the Declaration of Independence. The idea that all men are created equal, that is a John Locke principle. All men are entitled to their God-given natural rights, very much a John Locke principle. Government power comes from the people, very, very, very much a John Locke principle. And the right to rebel that we talked about earlier, the right to abolish an oppressive government, that is the same thing. If the government is not working for the people have a right to overthrow that government. All right. So the government is created to secure the rights of all the people. And when it doesn't do that, the people should get rid of it, kick it out, start anew. All right. You can see I included this picture right here of the French Revolution. They took it a little too far. You're wondering what the heck that is right there. That is King Louis XVI noggin. That is his body. You can see it's not connected. That's not good. So the French Revolution kind of took the American Revolution and took it to the extreme. All right. So, anyways, that's basically it for today. This slide 13 here is just a little memory test. So, got a picture of John Locke here. Nope, not the same one. John Locke. Nope, not the same one. But we do see this right here. That's boom and boom. Got it, right? So same thing. It's just a little fun thing to do. And then you've got your little 5-question quiz here at the end. All right, pretty simple. Like I always say, use your notes. That's why you took them. But that's all we got. So if you have any questions about this, let me know. But that's it. So thank you guys for listening and paying attention, and I'll be back at you with the next PowerPoint soon. All right, bye guys.